You're listening to the Evolved Men Podcast, episode number 1. Are you ready to break free from hesitation, self-doubt, and isolation? Do you want to lead with confidence, build powerful connections, and live boldly? I'm Corey Baum, and I'm here to share the most impactful strategies and mindsets that I've learned through coaching, leadership, and real-world experience. Together, we'll forge unshakable confidence, master social dynamics, and create a life rooted in purpose, brotherhood, and bold action. Inside, you'll get the tools and insights to become the strongest, most connected version of yourself. Let's dive in. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Evolved Men Podcast. I'm your host, Corey Baum. So this podcast, as we get into this, is for men who are tired of pretending, right? Tired of feeling numb and asking whether this is it, right? This is built for men who are ready to evolve, not just survive. This is for men who are ready for real talk, no performance, not perfection. As I say that, it kind of cracks me up because I've been through so many renditions of recording this podcast just to begin with, right? Like trying to get the audio right and the sound right and the video right and all of these different things, that it really is about just doing a cut and putting your word out there, being who it is, who you are, and letting the chips fall where they may, right? I was at a point, we'll just kind of start it right from the beginning, that I created this really because I was at a place in my life where I was lost, right? I was doing all of the things that you're supposed to do, or you're told all your life you're supposed to do. I had a really good education. I had a long career. I was really smart. I've been doing everything. I had the wife and the house and all the toys and the kids, right? And the kids were going to go to college. And, at the end of all of that, like, I really was still just asking, right, whether, like, why is it that I'm doing all of this, right? And why don't I feel good about where I'm at, right? I'd done everything. I had checked all of the boxes, or at least so I thought, but I still had this like empty hole. And I didn't know I didn't know what the feeling was. I didn't know why that was there. I didn't know how to fix it. I didn't know how to talk to. And so I really kind of just, in doing my own work, like I needed a place where I could have real, honest, and raw conversations, right? Like too often, I just feel like those conversations aren't being had by people nearly at all anymore, right? The people actually like connecting heart to heart and soul to soul and actually sharing what's on their mind, right? For a lot of my life, right? And kind of going, and I feel like this is the case with a lot of other guys. Like for a lot of my life, I had lived, the nice guy mentality, right? Like I was giving to get. I was a people pleaser. I was, seeking validation in every place that I could possibly find, right? Through any means sort of necessary. But at the end of that, right, like I was still so hollow. I didn't know what it was like to actually connect with somebody, to connect with my wife, to connect with my kids, right? To have deep conversations, to live a life worth living. Right. And so, and that's the same struggle that a lot of guys go through. And that's something that, that's a lot of the reason that this podcast exists, right? For just real stories, learning real tools and experiencing real growth, right? As we go through this, you guys will learn a lot more about me, but I just want you to know that this is a lived experience, right? This isn't just, something that I read about in a book, right? This is something that I've lived with and experienced for myself. One of the things that I struggled with for the longest time, right, was this like outdated sense or like models of masculinity, right? I'd been taught all of my life growing up that, I need to I need to be tall and strong and manly, whatever that means, and I don't need any help, and men don't show emotions, right? One of the what was the saying that I'll give you something to cry about was a common phrase in my household, right? And so and that's great and all, but the problem with that is that those models that we grew up on, right, and maybe our fathers and our grandparents, like all those things that were based on, like they're all collapsing, right? We're finding out that that's not successful in the ways that we want, in the ways that matter most to us. And the bigger problem than that is that nobody told us what to do next, right? So what are we supposed to do now? We've got these models that we've lived our entire lives around, and they're collapsing, and we have no framework to move forward with, right? And unfortunately, a lot of men are struggling silently, right? They're isolated and ashamed, and they're stuck in these patterns that aren't serving them or their family or their kids, right? They're using porn, they're drinking alcohol, seeking validations, having affairs, right? Yeah, and the worst part of all of this, right, is that everybody is doing this alone, right? Kind of along that same sort of line that we were taught that guys don't need help, right? That you're a sissy or you're weak if you seek out for help, right? And we know that those aren't working, right? Men don't evolve alone, right? They we need tools, right? We need language and we need brotherhood. Like too often anymore, like guys are completely disconnected from most other senses of connection with other men, right? The things that we used to have in the past that brought guys together, back in the day, it was high school and college and things like that. There was sports and there was football and there was people up and down the block, right? Kids are playing and they're outside playing in the dirt and doing different things. Like we don't have that anymore. And so we have this real lack of like guidance for how to lead, how to feel, and how to grow as modern men, right? And I, for one, as myself, like I don't know that I was really given a great example growing up of what it meant to actually be a man, right? Like I was maybe given this like kind of watch and hopefully pick up some of those sort of things, but honestly, like a lot of those models are the things that I'm talking about are things that I've put into place and they weren't necessarily having the outcomes that I've come to want, right? And to cherish, right? So kind of along those lines, right? I noticed as I was doing all of this work that doing a lot of work on myself, right? And I was reaching out and connecting with other guys, and that I can't, and guys in general can't do this work alone, right? We need tools and we need frameworks and language. And most of all, like I said, we need the brotherhood, right? To be able to run ideas against other men, right? To see how it's showing up for them in their lives and how they're responding to this event and how they were brought up, right? And we need better reflections of how it is that we're to be living our lives, right? And this podcast is meant for that container, right? It's a container where we can share those sort of stories. We can learn those tools and the language, and we can have that brotherhood that is going to connect us all. So this isn't meant to be therapy, right? This isn't meant to be church or just like macho boot camp. This is meant for men who are ready to lead, men who are ready to lead with depth and presence and integrity, for men who really want to be proud of the way that they live, that they love the ones that are around them, and how they lead not only themselves, but their families and in the community, right? It's really like how, for men that are proud to really like step into a more modern sense of masculinity, right? Like not completely getting away. And this isn't even to say that like that there wasn't good things out of the past that can't still be, admired or used or cherished or sort of thing. But we've got to take the information from before and put it with the information that we have right now and make the best of all of that, right? So most of all, this is men who are ready to evolve, right? That they've seen what it was and they know what they want it to be, and they just need the help in order to get there. So this podcast is for high achievers that are feeling burned out or just unfulfilled, right? For fathers that know that they really want something more for themselves and their families and their kids, but they don't have any idea of how to actually achieve that or how to get there, right? This is for men who, for all intents and purposes, look fine, right? Like everything is hunky-dory on the outside, but inside feel empty and hollow and shallow and don't have a sense of purpose and meaning and direction in their life. Right, this is also for leaders that are starting to realize that maybe you've got all of this power, right? And you can stand up there, but you have no purpose, and you're finding that it leaves you feeling really hollow. So, I talked a little bit about my story, but to dig into it a little bit more, right? Like I played the role really well, right? I wore the masks. I was the husband and the father and the businessman and such. And I mean, I lived it day in and day out on the outside, right? Like everybody, the classic like social media sort of story where on the outside, everybody thinks like, man, that couple is the happiest they could ever be. Corey's got it all together, or the family does. Like they're really going somewhere. Man, but inside, like, I was falling apart. Like I was coming apart at the seams. Like I had really, at the bottom of it, like I can't even say really at a certain point that I had betrayed my values, because I don't know to an extent that I had really ever had them, right? I don't know that I was never really given an opportunity to be like, to see like, hey, this is what integrity is, right? This is courage. This is these other things. And these are why it's important to live that out in life, right? This is why it's important to instill this and to walk with this every day. And kind of as a result of that, right? I betrayed what values I did have, right? And myself and my family. And I numbed out in any way possible, right? And some of the most common was porn. I avoided conflict like it was the plague, right? Like I would do anything to avoid having to have a hard conversation. I was basically your, storybook, nice guy. And so for me, right, really at the end of all of that, right, I lived my entire life with like that, not really knowing any different. And I reached this point finally where I'd been faking it to an extent my entire life, right? And this wasn't something like I necessarily always knew what it was that was going on for me in my own head, right? But I mean, there was a lot of times that I did, but I didn't know. I just thought that this is what men did, right? Like men watch porn, men had affairs, like, or men, can't be, can't be faithful. That this is just what guys do. It's no big deal, right? And so I didn't know what I didn't know, right? But I knew finally at a certain point that what I was doing was not going to be sustainable, and that, it was going to take out everybody around me, and including myself and my family, and really, like, I came face to face with the truth of more than likely, like, who it was that I was or I wasn't. So enough about that. We'll talk about that in some of the future episodes, but what this podcast is going to cover, right? This podcast is going to cover how to feel more, not less, right? Like how to use your emotions as a tool instead of a weakness, right? So how do we express how we're feeling? How do we connect with other people? How do we share those sort of moments and emotions with our kids, with our families, with our friends, right? It's going to talk about fatherhood, especially as it pertains to like being intentional, right? Showing up with presence and strength and leadership at home. We're going to talk about redefining masculinity and shedding these outdated rules, right, that we have, and stepping into a more grounded and powerful manhood, right? We're going to talk about what that looks like, what that doesn't look like, the ways that it shows up in our lives, and how we can do that more authentically. Authentic leadership, right? How to lead your life, your family, your work, your brothers, right? And those around you with integrity, right? So how do we show up in every aspect of our life with more leadership and authenticity and integrity? We're going to talk about building relationships that matter, right? Building deeper bonds with your partner, with your kids, with your brothers, right? And most of all, really yourself, right? I think too often anymore that I know for a lot of my life that all of my connections were at the surface. It was the usual, like, hey man, how you doing? I'm good, right on. But when I finally started to ask the deeper questions, right, it was eye-opening. Like nobody knew what to do, right? It was like I was from a foreign planet, right? And I was almost like shunned away from doing it. So on top of that, also doing the inner work, right? Inner work around purpose and shame, our identity, developing discipline and confidence, and learning what it takes to really grow, right? Being intentional about this. And we're also going to hear about stories from the edge, right? We're going to hear raw, real conversations with men who have done the same thing, who have burned out, who have broken down, right? Or have blown up their lives, and what it was that they built from the ashes, right? So some of these episodes are going to have real tools and reflections, right? There'll be me sharing frameworks, proven things that I've learned throughout my journey, right? With my own experiences, with the skills that I've learned through coaching and therapy and such. There'll also be guest conversations with men who have evolved, right? Going through their lives and their examples and the ways that has showed up and maybe ways that they can help support others. And then it's also going to be, maybe at times live coaching calls, right? Listener Q&As, or some raw, just group style dialogues. The thing that makes this podcast different, right? As I'm kind of standing here today, right? And I'll be honest, like this is super uncomfortable for me, but I know that if I want to show up and be my most authentic self, that I don't always get 100 takes in order to do it, right? And that'll be one of the things that set this podcast apart from the rest, is that there's no fluff or theory in here, right? It's just grounded, usable tools, right? These are things that you can take home tonight, that I've used with coaching clients, and things that I've learned that you can put into practice right away in order to make changes in your life, right? As I was kind of saying with the other one, is that this isn't about perfection, right? This is about just honest evolution, right? Like taking that first step into a new you, right? Taking that first step into that uncomfortable area of testing who it is that you can become. And this isn't just a podcast, right? The other half of this, so there's the Evolved Men podcast, and then there's the Evolved Men project, right? And this isn't just about me, and this isn't about my story, and this isn't necessarily about coaching, right? This is about coming together as a community of men, as a movement, if you will, or a brotherhood, and rising up together, right? Because honestly, when any one man rises up, he brings up the rest of everyone else around him. So what is an evolved man, right? An evolved man is grounded, he's emotionally aware, he's clear in his leadership, he holds space for pain, and sets boundaries with grace, right? This isn't the guy that just walks around super macho and he's an asshole to everybody, right? No, he's strong, he's confident, but he's also soft, right? And he can hold that place for himself and his family and for others. And he lives from the inside out, right? Not from external validation. He lives from a place of knowing who it is that he wants to be, and then continually and consistently taking the actions and doing the things that he needs to do in order to have the things that he wants in his life, right? The things that are important to him. And the reason that this all matters, right, is that honestly, most men never get here, right? Men, they're born and they die with their music still in their hearts, right? They never, it's almost this analogy of like they go to work every day, day in and day out, and they never actually let out or experience who it is that they are, right? And even, it's not even that they don't even share it with anybody, like they don't even know it for themselves. That they've never explored, they've never asked the questions, right? Because from a young age, they were taught not that emotions were bad and don't cry, don't feel this, right? And so this really matters. And this is more about liberation, right? Liberation from the old stories that, like I talked about, men don't have emotions, don't cry, all of these other things, and this silent suffering that everybody is doing alone, right? And so the thing is that you don't have to man up, right? In the old sort of way. You don't have to like do it harder, do it stronger, do it, faster than everybody else. It's to say that, hey, there's a new way forward, right? That we can do this. We can share our emotions. We can come together. We can support each other. we can do all of that and still be strong, confident leaders, right? So my promise to you guys as I'm doing this, right, is I'm not this like guru that's up here posturing up, right? I don't necessarily have it all figured out. Like I've had a pretty amazing journey from the depths of where I was at to where I'm at today. Like I've learned an immense amount, and those are the sort of things that I want to share with you, right? I want to hear your examples and share where I've been, where I've come from, where I've learned. And so it's just realness, real authenticity, right? Every episode will be honest. It'll be challenging possibly at times, but it'll still be supportive, right? So my commitment to you guys is just to be here and to walk the path with you, right? Not to stand up on front of some podium and tell you that, this is what you need to do. And it's to tell you and to show you kind of along the way that, man, I've been there. Like I have walked the walk, like I've walked through the shitty situations, and I'm here to talk about it today. Right. So that's what I've got for this first episode of the Evolved Men podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you guys would subscribe and follow. And most of all, just, take the next step, right? Like this doesn't have to be perfect. So if there's anything that you take away from this episode today, is to just start doing the work. Just take 1%, just take one step forward, be 1% better every day. Right. So, all right, guys, have a good one. That's what I got for this first episode. Bye. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Evolved Men podcast. If today's episode challenged you, inspired you, or gave you something to think about, don't stop here. Keep building, keep evolving. Head over to www.evolvedmenproject.com, where you'll find free resources on confidence, leadership, relationships, communication, and personal power. Everything you need to start applying what you've learned here and take your growth to the next level. The tools are there. The next move is yours. Until the next time, men, stay strong, lead powerfully, and live boldly.